time to talk about The Last of Us. It is a good show. So, The Last of Us recently finished up its first season and everyone's loving it, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to season 2 or part 2, whatever they decide to call it. And personally, I've been thinking a lot about how part 2 would fare in terms of the translation to TV compared to The Last of Us Part 1. I mean, The Last of Us Part 1 has a lot of great character moments anyway in the game, so translating it was pretty easy, but Part 2 is a much longer game, and in my opinion, a weaker game. But I've been thinking a lot recently about how will it actually translate. Just a quick warning before I start off, there's going to be spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2, so if you're someone who's only played the first game or watched the first season, you may want to go on to another video. Hey, why don't you check out some more of mine? I make a lot of stuff like this. Why don't you subscribe? Check out other stuff. It'd be great. Would love to see you back. Now, when it comes to Season 2 of The Last of Us, personally, I don't find the game as good as The Last of Us Part 1. Not that it's a bad game, but I don't think it is as strong as the first game. But I was thinking about like the elements that makes up The Last of Us Part 2. So you got the gameplay elements, you have the story, you have the themes. All of them are fine on their own. My problem comes in when all of those try to mesh together. That, you put them together and they grind against each other and they don't quite work. The story itself, albeit controversial at times, is fine. It's serviceable. I don't think there's anything offensively bad in it. The gameplay is very good. But the biggest problem comes in when you bring in the themes. When you bring in the theme of how revenge is not good for anyone and how violence begets violence, when you try and mesh that in with the gameplay, which just throws swaths of enemies at you to kill, I feel that is such a contradiction in the game. So when it comes to Season 2 or Part 2 of The Last of Us, I think that removing the gameplay may actually make the story stronger. So throughout the entire game of The Last of Us Part 2, the game is telling you how bad killing is and how bad revenge is and how partaking in that is very bad for a person as a whole. But yet the gameplay doesn't offer any ways to actually conform to those themes. The gameplay is very much trying to portray an unpleasant experience. So the best way for the player to actually interact with the theme of how killing and revenge is bad is to not play the game. So when Part 2 gets adapted into a season or multiple seasons of The Last of Us, that's going to remove the gameplay element, which means that the themes and the story of the game will actually get a much better chance to mesh together because you can see how the themes directly affect the character. Whereas if you introduce the gameplay, you have the problem of the game telling you that what you're doing is bad, but yet it still pushes you on to do it. It's meant to be an uncomfortable experience from a gameplay perspective, which kind of hampers the gameplay in an unusual sense. So decoupling the gameplay from the story and the themes for Season 2, I think is going to help to make The Last of Us Part 2 a better TV show than a game. You're going to more so see how everything affects the characters as opposed to experiencing this uncomfortable feeling of being told that what you're doing is wrong, yet still being forced through to do it because that's the only way to complete the game. Then, as well as that, halfway through the game, you switch to Abby, who is a character who you are meant to hate from the start of the game because of her actions. So again, it creates another uncomfortable experience because as the player, you should want your character to succeed. So when it comes to The Last of Us Part 2, you want Ellie to succeed because you have played as both Ellie and Joel for an entire previous game. They are the protagonists. They are the characters who you want to win. They are the characters who won you over the course of the first game. Then you switch to Abby halfway through the second game, and the game tries to force you to like this character and put you on this character's side to force them to succeed. It creates a very uncomfortable situation for the player. But if you remove the player from that aspect, it works a lot better. There's also other advantages of adapting the game to a TV show. They kind of have the benefit of hindsight in that the pacing felt a little off in The Last of Us Part 2, but they can fix that a little bit in the TV show. They can rewrite any clunky dialogue. They have the advantage of knowing what characters people like and what characters people dislike, or why they dislike them, so they can slightly change them a little bit, that maybe to not have as rough edges as characters. Now, season 1 literally just ended, so I realize I'm very early on in saying this, but thinking back on my experience of The Last of Us Part 2 and all the aspects of it that create an uncomfortable experience for the player, I think that removing the player aspect and just experiencing the story as a viewer will make all parts of the story stand out a lot stronger, and to help you to resonate a bit more with some of the more questionable characters. So I'm hoping that by watching The Last of Us Part 2, it makes a much more overall enjoyable experience of the story, rather than being uncomfortable in playing The Last of Us Part 2, which, I mean, you're going through the story for 25 hours. That's a long time to try and make the player uncomfortable, and I don't think the game quite succeeded with that. But removing that aspect for the TV show, I think will help the series and the story become a lot stronger. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you everyone for watching. If you made it this far, by all means, please check out my other content. I talk about just random topics like this from time to time. And also check out my back catalogue of live streams, check out my socials, they're all linked below. And yeah, hope to see you around here again. Take care, guys. Welcome to the ASMR part of the video where I'm cleaning dust. Yeah, you're all clean now. Oh wait, no you're not. I suck at cleaning. God, I'm stupid.